Okay, today we're down in Ecclesiastes chapter 11. Now, that means that we have one more chapter to go, and then we will be through with the book of Ecclesiastes. Now, as we come down to the end, next week is going to be bringing everything to a conclusion, talking about what it is like when you come down to the end of your life. So in essence, today is the last day that we're going to have all of these little statements that are given to us to tell us how to be happy. Now let's keep in mind again, for the 500th time, that the book of Ecclesiastes is talking about how to be happy on this earth. And it goes through, and it appears as though the author is not even considering that there is life after death. He's just thinking about what should you do here on this earth if there is no life after death? What would be the best way to live so you could be happy? However, that statement is not true, because we've seen 4 or 5 times that he brings this out, and then he says, then he brings God in and says, but God, and then he makes his point there. Now, next week is where he's really going to drive the point home, and when he's really going to show us, thank you, Mitch, really going to show us that there is life after death. Now, I want to emphasize that because I want us to understand that the book of Ecclesiastes approaches it, life on this earth, but always keeping in mind there is life after death. And that's going to be the next thing that we have there. Now, I might ask you a question. I'm wrestling with a little problem. And that is that next week is going to be our last class that we have. We have one more week before our meeting, and Jack Hafer will be teaching that. And then the following week, Jordan will be taking up our class, and he'll be studying the book of Nehemiah. So I'm wrestling. Do I go back and review the book? Do I break it down into two parts, the chapter into 2 parts, so that I'll come out on time? Or I got to thinking, and here's what I'm going to ask you, that a lot of times, now chapter 12 is going to be talking about old people, what it feels like when you get old. Now, you got the best teacher in the world for that. And I can tell you what it feels like when you get up there and you get old. So he's going to be talking about your life down at the end of your life. Now, in the next class, I got to thinking that there's a lot of times I think that people would like to talk to an older person and ask them some questions about how they view life and how they view death. But we're kind of embarrassed, and we don't want to come up and ask somebody about this, and we think that we're opening up a subject that might be a little touchy and a little sore to them, and talking about what it means really to die. Now, to be truthful with you, I think many times every day, and I spend quite a lot of time thinking about my death. That's going to be the next big thing in my life, is going to be my death. And I was just wondering if you have questions that you would like to ask me about what is it like when you get at that stage. How do you feel about dying? How do you feel about thinking this or that or whatever it is? Now, I don't know whether you have any interest in that or not, but if you do, we just throw it open, and any question will be good, and we'll talk about any one. But what I'd like to do today, I'd like to know how many of you would like to have a class like that. Hold up your hand if you would like that, and hold it up high so I can see. Well, yeah, there's a whole lot of them. Okay. Tell you what to do then. Here's what I'd like for you to do so we can go about it in a orderly way, is why don't you email me your question. Email me the question. Don't be embarrassed. Just ask me. Say, Lowell, what does it feel like when you get old and useless and no good? And just go ahead and lay the thing out any way that you want to lay it out, and know that you may not get up in the morning and so forth. And any way that you want to ask the question really will be okay with me. Now, it wouldn't be any use of having a class if we have any restrictions on it. So go ahead and email me the questions that you would like for me to deal with. And if I get enough of them this week, that's what we'll do. If I don't, then you'll probably have to sit there and just listen to me preach to you in the last class period. Okay, let's go to chapter 11 now. And in chapter 11, he's going to be talking about three things. Now, the first thing he's going to be talking about is benevolence. And he's going to be showing us and rounding out what life is like on this earth. And he's going to be saying, here is how you should spend your life. Make sure you spend it doing good works. Make sure you spend it in doing good for other people. And do good for other people, even though that you're not doing it so that they will do good to you. Just do good to other people, be benevolent, do good, and one day it'll all come back around. And you will see that the time will come when you will need help, and people are going to be there to help you if you're that kind of an individual. All right, that's how he starts. So let's look at this. He says, in chapter 11, verse 1, cast your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days. This is a little proverb. People argue about what it means. You cast your bread upon the waters, and I've never heard anybody be able to explain why they would say cast it upon many waters, except take your life-giving substance, things that you have, cast it on water, and you know that it's going to disappear. You may not see what's going to happen. This is what I understand that it's talking about. You may not be able to see what is going to happen, but you're going to give. You're going to do benevolence. You're going to cast your bread upon many waters. You're going to do many, many good works without really ever being able to anticipate or see exactly how these things will turn out. But do them anyway. Do good works. Just keep doing good works is the idea he's got here. He says, give a serving to 7 and also to 8, for you do not know what evil will be upon the earth. So give your servings to 7, yea to 8. This is another way of saying, really the number 7 is a word for completeness in your Bible times. And it's saying, give the things that you have to anybody that needs it. Don't be stingy. Then even go beyond that. Even go beyond and give unto 8. So give unto 7, give unto 8 is again a proverb showing don't be stingy, do your good works, give to people, and one day it's going to come back to you again. Now he says in verse 3, and he here is talking about the same thing, except he changes the subject a little. He said, if the clouds are full of rain, they empty themselves upon the earth. And if a tree falls to the south or the north, in the place where the tree falls, there shall it lie. Now you say, I knew that. Yeah. You go out and you look at the clouds and you want it to rain, but you don't have any power to make it to rain. Or if it starts to rain, and this has happened to many of us many, many times in our life, where we would have a job we're out doing outdoors, and we're trying to get it done before the rains come, and you look up, and I don't want those rains to come, and all of a sudden they come. Well, you're not going to stop it. And so the rains are going to fall when the right time comes. Now, what he's saying is merely this, and that is there are things we don't have any control over. And live your life understanding that. Live your life understanding there are many things you don't have control over. Some things you do. We're talking about benevolence. The thing that you do have control over is that you can cast your bread upon many waters. You can do good works, but there are other things of which you don't have any control over. And understand that. And you might say, well, I wish I could do this, but you can't. Or I wish I hadn't have done this, but you did. So there are things that happen in your life that you just don't have any control over. Now, I'm emphasizing this because over and over again, we have seen throughout the book that he makes this point. He makes the point that we're never going to be able to figure out God's plan, never going to be able to figure out all the answers, and the way that you live is you do good. That's the way that you live. Make sure that you do good, and things will turn out all right. Then in verse 4, he who observes the wind will not sow, and he who regards the clouds will not reap. Now, again, we're all tied into benevolence here, but this is good in any realm of life. And what he's trying to say is that if you wait for things to be perfect, you're never going to get around to doing it. You look at the farmer, and the farmer goes out, and it says, he who observes the wind will not sow. So it's time now to sow your seed. Well, in those days, they'd have a basket they'd carry. You'd grab a handful of seed, and you'd throw the seed out. And you'd throw the seed out as far as you could and scatter it over the field. Now, if you can throw it out, you can get it kind of even over the land. But if the wind is blowing, you throw the seed out and away the seed goes. And you think, boy. And so if the wind is really blowing hard, you don't go out and cast your seed. You don't go out and do that because it would be foolish. You're going to have a crop failure. But on the other hand, that gives a guy like me who is lazy and doesn't want to plant a good excuse. So I get up tomorrow and I go out and I don't feel like planting my field. So I look around. You know, the wind is starting to pick up a little bit, I think. There seems to be a breeze. And I wonder if it's going to get windy today. I'm regarding the wind. See? Yeah, I bet you it's going to get windy today. I don't think I should sow today, so I go back to bed. Okay? Now, if we do this, we're never going to get any sowing done. And on the other hand, then he says, and he who regards the clouds will not reap. Now, on the other end of our farming, after we've sown, after the crop is growing, we're ready to go out and harvest. Now, rain has a lot to do with it. Because if we go out and we cut this wheat and we shock it up and we put it in the field, and then the rain comes and it rains down on this, and the rain and the wet weather stays there for 2 or 3 days, it's going to get all moldy and it's going to ruin your entire crop. So you can't harvest at certain times when it's getting ready to rain. But if you regard the rain, you can use that rain as an excuse. So you go out and you say, well, I really don't want to do this work because it's really hard. And you look up and you see the clouds and you think, boy, you know, these clouds may bring rain. If it does, it'll ruin the crop. I don't think I'm going to cut that wheat today. So I go back to bed. So what he's saying is that if you try to use these things that you don't have any control over as excuses to not work, then it's never going to happen. You're never going to get your crop sown, and you're never going to get the harvest done. And the same thing is true with benevolence. If you wait until everything is right, you're never going to get everything done. And so he's saying, as you go through life, don't look for excuses to get out of work. Don't look for excuses to keep you from doing what you ought to do. Make sure you get out and you work and you do what you should do. Now, he's not saying be foolish and go out when it's raining and harvest your crops. And he's not saying go out when the wind is blowing and throw out your seed and let it blow away. He's not saying be foolish on that end. What he's talking about is the other end. Don't use excuses to get to do things that you need to do. Then in verse 5, as you do not know what is the way of the wind, or how the bones grow in the womb in her that is with child, so you do not know the works of God who makes everything. So again, we come back to this thing. Told us over and over and over again in the book, in this particular book. And he says, just like you don't understand the wind. You go out there today and you look up and look around and you can't even see the wind. And you say, what's going to happen to the wind? You can't even see it. Just like you don't know how the wind works, and you don't understand how the bones grow in a child that's in the mother's womb. We don't understand that. So we'll never understand the works of God. That's a major lesson in the book of Ecclesiastes. And as he's rounding it off, bringing it to a conclusion, he wants us to see that again. And that is, Solomon said, I have approached this subject with all the wisdom that I have, and I have found that I cannot find out the works of God. God's works are so magnificent, they are so great, and they are so backward in the way men would do it that I can't figure it out. He said, I think I've got it figured out of what is good. Remember, he goes back and he says, it would be good if a righteous man could live a long, happy life, and a wicked man would die young. That would be the way that it should happen, it seems like. And so he said, I looked this over, and I found that's not the way it happened. I found out that, he said, I found out that it pays to be good, and if you are good and you do what is right, you're going to be happy, and you're going to live a longer life. But, he said, I also found this out. I have found that there are righteous people who die young, and there are wicked people who live to be old. He said, I can't figure it out. And he goes on and talking about this. And the book is to tell us God has a system in this universe, and we're not going to be able to figure out the system and say, okay, here's when we do this, here's when we do that. He has the system, but what we have to understand is we work within God's system. And within God's system, he says, I know it pays to be good. He said, it doesn't make any difference what else you find. I know that. But he comes back and says, we cannot find out the works of God. So here it is again. If you say, I'm going to analyze this thing, and I'm going to find out so I know for sure before I do any good work, I know for sure that this will pay off somehow or another, you're never going to do it. You're never going to do it. And so he's trying to get us to see, go about life doing good every day of your life. In verse 6, in the morning sow your seed, and in the evening do not withhold your hand. For you do not know which will prosper, either this or that, or whether both alike will be good. So he said, here's the thing to do. You can't figure it out. You're not going to be able to figure it out. You're just not going to be able to do it. So he said, what you do is you be diligent every day. You be diligent every day. You get up and you go out and you sow your seed in the morning, and in the evening, don't withhold your hand. Don't just back off and say, well, I'm not going to do anything. Diversify is what we call today. Do this, do that. You don't know which one will pay off. If you go in a business, this business may fail, this one may pay off. You don't know. So what do? Well, you work just as hard as you can work. Well, what if you have some failures? That's okay. They're going to come. That's his point. They're going to come in life. So just because there's going to be failures, don't let that keep you from doing what you need to be doing. Get up, go to work, work hard, be diligent, be good, be kind, be helpful, and you don't know which one's going to pay off. He said sometimes one will fail, another will pay off. Sometimes both will fail, and sometimes both will be highly successful. So he's trying to give us those daily admonitions, just rounding out the book as a whole and showing us that understand God is in control. He's in control of life. He's in control of your life. And so you get up and you work within that system. And you work as hard as you can. You be as good as you can. You do as much good as you can. And then you're going to find that happiness will come to you in this life. Then in verse 7, truly the light is sweet, and it is pleasant for the eyes to behold the sun. But if a man lives many years and rejoices in them all, yet let him remember the days of darkness, for they will be many, and all that is coming is vanity. So he said, now, the light is pleasant. All right, let's set the stage of what he's actually talking about. What he's talking about is life on this earth. Life here where you have light and where you can see what is going on in there. So it's a pleasant thing. Life on this earth, being able to see what goes on, is a very pleasant thing. He said, but now as you go through life, you remember this. Now this is a good point. We made it at the very beginning. You remember one thing. Truly the light is sweet. That's something we're all enjoying right now. And it is pleasant to the eyes to behold the sun. See, life under the sun. He used that how many times? I think it's 29 times in this book. Life under the sun. And so it's a pleasant thing to be able to behold the sun. We're talking about life on this earth is the point that I'm getting at, see? Talking about life on this earth. But if a man live many years and rejoices in them all. But don't you ever forget this. If you live to be an old man, and you're able to rejoice in all the years of your life, don't you ever forget one thing as you go through life, and that is that the dark days are coming. He said, let him remember the days of darkness, for they will be many, and all will be vanity. Now, what's the days of darkness? Days of darkness are the days you're in the grave. It's the days of light are while you're living, while you can see the light of the sun. The days of darkness are after you die. Now, you might say again, and I repeat it again and again and again in this book, if this is the only thing you've got, you would say Solomon didn't believe in life after death. You would say, look, he said after you die, it's going to be days of darkness, and all that will be vanity. Well, in what we see in comparison to this life, that's true. When you die, you're going to be buried, and you're going to lie there until the resurrection. And there's going to be many days, and they're days of darkness. As he's already told, he explained, you'll not know what's going on this earth. Once you die, then everything that you do and know, have on this earth, you're not going to have that anymore. You're not going to have any more earthly activities. In fact, you will even be forgotten. You'll even be forgotten. You'll not even be remembered. Your children will have children, and when they have children, your name will probably not even be remembered. If somebody says, who was your great-great-grandpa? They'll probably say, I never heard of him. I don't know who he was. That's how important we are as far as life on this earth is concerned. Now, it said they're all vanity. Now, if this is the only verse we had, we'd say, yep, no life after death. But we're getting ready to see in this, even today, but next week, of where, yep, there is life after death. And do you know when life after death starts? According to the book of Proverbs, as you look at it, you say, when does it start? It starts the moment you die. We'll see that next week. That'll be part of our lesson next week. But now, remember, we're talking about life on this earth. So live a good life, because one day you're not going to be alive. Then, here's an interesting thing in verse 9. Rejoice, O young man, in your youth, and let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. Walk in the ways of your heart and in the sight of your eyes, but know that for all these things God will bring you unto judgment. Now, we can see here again, he keeps throwing these things in. God will bring you to judgment. And in a little while, next week, we'll see that's going to happen the moment that you die. You're going to go back to the God who made you. But now, he talks to the young people. What do you do in your youth? Well, here's some pretty good advice. You do what young people do. He said, you let your heart cheer you in the days of your youth. So be happy, be contented while you're young, and do what young people do. Now, don't get off base and think that he's saying go out and sow your wild oats, is the way we put it here in America. He's going to show us here, God will bring you to judgment. But no, how do you live? Well, the way you live is, what age are you? What do people do at that age? See? What do they do? Here a while back, Alec bought a quad. Stupidest thing I've ever heard of. I couldn't figure out why he bought that thing. If he had brought it over and put it in my garage, I'd never use it. I might back it out the door and drive it back in, but I'm not taking it up in the woods and running around and doing all of those dumb things that you do. And that doing stuff like that is just plain stupid, see? Well, now, is Alex supposed to say, okay, Grandpa says they're plain stupid, and Grandpa wouldn't go out and do that for anything, so I'm not going to go out and do it because I want to live like Grandpa. Alec, that's stupid. So what does Alec do? Alec buys him a quad. He goes out and has some fun. What do? I'm not going to buy a quad. I'm going to have my fun sitting in my chair. And so it's a different lifestyle. It's a different lifestyle. So what do? Well, what is your age? Your age, and you say, well, I'm old enough, I'm going to get married and raise children. Well, don't come and ask me to do that. That's the worst thing I could ever think of. Anybody that would raise a kid, they've got something wrong with them. I mean, I can't think of anything worse than raising a kid. See? Right now, Jen's got little Gus out there spanking him or doing something. She just walked out the door. See, poor woman. So you say, well, what do you do then, you see? Well, you see, if I had a child at my age, I would be dead in about 7 minutes, okay? And just wipe me out. So nope, no way that I could handle that. So what do you do if you're that age? You have children, that's what you do. You do what people do at the age of where you are. You live your life to the fullest. You do what people do so that you can be happy. So live your life to the fullest. Now, as you live your life to the fullest, then always remember this one thing. He said, walk in the ways of your heart and in the sight of your eyes, but know thou that for all these God will bring you into judgment. So now, as Alec goes out and starts living the way a 23, 24-year-old guy would live and doing the things he would want to do, that's fine. But Alec, remember one thing. If you're 24, you 23 or 24? 23. Okay, remember one thing if you're 23. Then remember the same thing when you're 33. And then remember the same thing when you're 43, 53, 63, 73. Remember the same thing. And that is, as you are living on this earth and enjoying life, you do good, and remember, God will bring you unto judgment. So if you go out and get involved in evil things, whether you're young or whether you're old, you're going to stand before the great judgment bar of God. So he's not saying, go out and do anything you want to do. He's saying, make sure that you live a life to where you can stand before God, but make sure you live your life in harmony with your age, the way you are. Enjoy life. That's what makes the world the way it is. Don't try to be the age of somebody else. If you're 23, don't try to act as mature as a 53-year-old would act. So God will bring you to judgment. Therefore, remove sorrow from your heart and put away evil from your flesh, for childhood and youth are vanity. So in all of this then, he says, do this. Make sure that you put away evil. We've already talked about that. Remove sorrow from your heart. Be happy. The book of Ecclesiastes wants us to be happy. That's what the whole book is about. The whole book is written so that it says, if you want to be happy in this life, here's how you live. So be happy, stay away from evil, and then remember, childhood and youth are vanity. So even when you have your childhood, when you have your youth, when you're as strong as you can be, when you can do all the things that makes me tired even thinking about, when you have all of those things, just remember, they're all vanity. Whatever you have today is going to pass away. Whatever you have a year from today is going to pass away. Whatever you have in 10 years from now is going to pass away. There's nothing that you can accumulate, nothing that you can get, nothing you can do physically, nothing you can do in this earth that is not going to pass away. And then it'll all be over and it'll be vanity. If I were to ask you what your great-great-grandpa did for fun, you'd say, I don't have any idea. I don't know what he did. It's all vain. It's all gone. And that's the way it is with our life. So he's bringing us down now to this conclusion before we get into that last great chapter. And that is, I want you to be happy. But in order to be happy, you have to do that which is good and right. You have to be obedient to God. And don't get too serious about yourself. You're never going to figure out life. So live life to its fullest. Do all the good that you can do, and you'll be able to live a happy life on this earth. Next week, we'll see what happens at the end. Class dismissed.